Some workplace cultures don't just kind of fail to help people grow. They're actually built to destroy growth from the inside out. They run on a single principle. Protecting a certain story is more important than anything else, even the truth. And well, that's a recipe for absolute disaster. So let me ask you this. What's the single most dangerous belief a company can hold? Is it a bad strategy? A flawed product? No. It's something way more fundamental, something that poisons the entire well long before the company even looks sick on the outside.
Get this. This is a real quote from someone who used to work at Theranos. The belief that questioning the official story is an act of betrayal, that is the most dangerous idea in business. At Theranos, this wasn't just a friendly suggestion. It was a hard rule, enforced with intimidation and legal threats, all to protect a technology that, let's be honest, never really worked in the first place.
Okay, so how does a culture get this toxic? To really get it, we need to dissect the anatomy of fear. This isn't just about a bad boss or a stressful month. It's a whole system. And like any system, it's got parts you can actually identify. A culture of fear isn't an accident. It's a carefully engineered environment. Leadership doesn't just discourage bad news. They actively punish the people who bring it. The whole goal is to control the narrative, no matter what. It creates this crazy echo chamber where the official story is the only one you're allowed to hear, even if everyone knows it's completely disconnected from reality. So how do they do it? Well, they have a playbook, and it looks something like this. At Theranos, leadership absolutely perfected it. They hoarded information, making sure no one person could see the full disastrous picture. If a scientist raised a red flag, they weren't just ignored, they were attacked, called incompetent. That's shooting the messenger. And when that happens again and again, you get gaslighting, where brilliant people start to actually doubt their own eyes and their own expertise. The whole system is set up to reward optimistic lies and make telling the truth career suicide. And the consequences here, they're not just about a toxic place to work. The silence that this fear creates has a very real, measurable, and often catastrophic cost to the business, its customers, and, yeah, its shareholders. And that cost can be absolutely staggering. 3.5 million? What is that number? That's how many fake bank accounts were created at Wells Fargo. And this wasn't just a few rogue employees having a bad day. It was the completely predictable result of a culture that set impossible sales goals and had a zero-tolerance policy for anyone who dared to say those goals were, well, impossible. I mean, just think about what this means for a second. For thousands of employees at Wells Fargo, the choice was ridiculously simple. Either commit fraud or lose your job. When leadership punishes the messenger, they don't fix the problem. They just shove it underground, where it festers and grows into a full-blown, headline-grabbing scandal. Here's another number for you, another cost of a broken culture. 97%. That's how much value Yahoo lost from its peak. Their leaders were so insulated from what was really happening in the market, so lacking in a clear vision, that they famously passed on the chance to buy Google, not once, but twice. They just couldn't hear the future knocking because the only story they wanted to hear was about protecting their old dying business model. Oh, and this is a classic move in a culture of fear. Always blame downwards. As the iPhone was eating their lunch, BlackBerry execs were out there publicly blaming their own engineers for not being innovative enough. But the reality, it was the complete opposite. The engineers could have competed, but leadership flat out refused to let go of the keyboard, the one thing that had made them successful. They chose denial over adaptation every single time. And the result of all that denial? Less than 1%. That was BlackBerry's final market share. They were busy perfecting a product for a world that just didn't exist anymore, all because the culture made it impossible for anyone to stand up and say the truth. The keyboard's reign was over. Okay, so if that's the poison, what's the antidote? The opposite of a culture of fear isn't some vague culture of happiness. It's a culture of trust. And here's the thing, trust doesn't just happen by accident. It has to be engineered. You have to build systems for it. Picture this. You're in a Toyota factory. Any worker on the assembly line at any time can pull a rope called the andon cord. And when they do, the entire multi-million-dollar production line grinds to a complete halt. Now, in most companies, that would get you fired on the spot. But at Toyota, it's celebrated. That cord is a physical symbol that says, we actually want to hear about problems the second they happen. See, pulling the cord doesn't trigger punishment. It triggers a process. The team gets together, and the first question isn't, who messed up? It's, what in our system allowed this to happen? They actually document the entire story on a single A3 size piece of paper. This turns every single mistake into a piece of shared wisdom for the entire organization. Trust isn't a feeling here. It's a documented, repeatable process.
Okay, here's another system of trust, and this one might just blow your mind. At any Ritz-Carlton hotel, every single employee, from the general manager all the way to the housekeepers, is authorized to spend up to $2,000 to solve a guest's problem. Right there, on the spot. No manager approval necessary.
And you might be thinking, $2,000? That's insane. But the logic behind it is actually simple, and it's pretty profound. That $2,000 isn't seen as an expense. It's an investment. The company is betting on its employees to make smart decisions, and by doing that, they empower them to create legendary customer service. They've done the math, and they know the cost of a bad reputation is way, way higher than the cost of one employee's creative solution.
So the big takeaway here is that this isn't just about being a nice place to work. These cultural systems, these systems of trust, they translate directly into a powerful, measurable, and sustainable competitive advantage. And this is where the rubber really meets the road. Just look at Costco. For years, Wall Street analysts hammered them for paying their employees too much. But what was the result? An employee turnover rate that's below 10%, while the industry average is a whopping 75%. Just think about the money they save on recruiting and training alone. It's a massive financial advantage built entirely on a culture of respect.
You've probably heard this quote before, but it perfectly sums all of this up. You can have the most brilliant, genius strategy in the world, but if your culture is toxic, if people are terrified to speak up, share a crazy idea, or admit they made a mistake, that strategy is completely doomed. A great culture, on the other hand, can often fix a mediocre strategy all by itself. When you really boil it all down, it comes to this. An organization's culture is really just the collection of stories it tells itself. So what's the dominant story at your company? Is it about the time someone spoke up and got punished for it? Or is it about the time someone pulled the andon cord and was treated like a hero? Those stories, they aren't just history. They are the blueprint for your company's future. So I'll leave you with this to think about. Forget the mission statement hanging on the wall. What are the real stories? The ones people tell in the hallways, over lunch, or after work? Because that story, whether it's one of fear or one of trust, is the single most accurate predictor of where your company is truly headed.